where you're based in the chat. Also, too, if you have questions throughout the presentation, feel free to add questions into the chat as well. I'll be going through those through the end or answering them along the way. We'll give it just a couple more minutes and then we'll jump into the content. All right, I think we can go and get started and just jump in. Um, Thank everyone for joining today. As I said, feel free today to add questions directly into the chat. I'll be happy to answer those as we go or save them for the end. Um, I don't know if anybody's attended a Start Out event before. I've been doing events with Start Out for a couple years now. I've been involved with Start Out for a while. Great organization. And so I'm excited for you to be here. Really, the topic of today is going to be talking about just the basics of SEO. This is really geared to like beginner level information. So if you know anything about SEO or you're more advanced, this is probably going to be pretty surface level for you. But just want to have this intro conversation to kind of get these kind of 101 questions out of the way for when it comes to SEO and you're thinking about your business. Um, but before we jump in, just a little bit about me. So I'm actually based in Austin. I saw someone said they were based in Texas as well. So I'm a second time founder. Originally was the founder of an ed tech company. Exited that company and then launched Rex Marketing. Focused in the areas of growth marketing, SEO, really in the education and healthcare space more specifically. Been at a handful of early stage startups and helped them expand and grow. At Rex Marketing CX, just a little bit about what we do. We work almost specifically with early stage companies and startups, usually in the healthcare space, um, but focus in the areas of SEO, content marketing, design, marketing operations, and services start at 300. So really just kind of can work with any budget, but that's just a little bit about us. But jumping into the content of what we're going to be talking about today. So going to be just covering like what is SEO? What does that mean? Why should you be thinking about it or prioritizing it for your business? Going to be talking about how search engines work, just the fundamentals, crawling and indexing, ranking factors, so things you need to be thinking about when you want your content to start ranking organically. Um, Common mistakes that I often see when it comes to SEO if you're a beginner and just getting started, and then some actionable next steps. So if you're wanting to start to actually prioritize and focus on SEO as part of your marketing strategy and your growth strategy, what does that look like for a first time or a beginner? So first off, what is SEO? So SEO, search engine optimization, if you're, I'm sure you are all aware of the acronym, the importance of it. When you prioritize SEO for your business, you're able to increase your visibility online, which in turn leads to increased website traffic. At the end of the day, it's great to have more traffic, but what we're really wanting to achieve is leads and conversions. We'll talk about this later as well, but when it comes to SEO and organic as part of your strategy, it's an extremely cost-effective channel versus tying yourself to like, for example, meta ads, any form of paid advertising. Um, the cost uh, the cost per conversion is much lower when it comes to SEO once you get it right. So converting organic traffic is a much more effective and cheaper channel for a business. And also too, whenever you're getting content ranking, people are seeing your brand, seeing your brand name. It's helping build credibility for your brand, and making it seem as you're an authority in the space, of whatever it is you do, whether that be a tech company, whether that be an agency, a consultant, whatever it may be. Um, and also too, to call out here, just as like a data point, the number one spot in Google search gets nearly 32% of clicks. So at the end of the day, if you can rank on the first page, that's awesome. But what you're really trying to do is rank for that top result. Um, Now we'll talk about it a little bit, but with the introduction of Gemini in Google search and the AI prompt that you'll usually see now, there's things we need to do and talk about around how to appear in AI search results as well. But at the end of the day, we're aiming to get to that first position in Google search. Um, so talking just briefly about search engines. So there's a number of different types of search engines. We have the obviously Google, the one we probably all use on a daily basis. Bing, Yahoo, also looking at AI search engines as well, ChatGPT, Gemini, and there's more and more. DuckDuckGo, EcoSea I've heard of. There's a number of them out there. They all function pretty similarly. When we talk about optimization for SEO, we usually think talking about optimizing for Google when it comes to just traditional SEO. Google's kind of the standard. I'd say all other search engines base their ranking algorithms off of Google search. So and it's the most prominently used search engine across the internet. So whenever we think about optimizing or optimizing our content, optimizing our website, we're doing it in the lens of Google for context. And just again, another call out here, like 91% of searches are conducted through Google search today, which is why we prioritize Google search when it comes to optimization. Um, so again, I talked about this briefly, but why care about SEO? Overall, it's a more cost-effective channel for your business. Um, Again, users are more likely to trust your brand. How often do we probably can speak from firsthand experience when we're searching for a brand, we're searching for a solution or a product or what have you. We often will trust and have that intuition to trust those brands that are showing in the top of search results. Those are probably the brands that we are going to engage with or purchase from or book a demo with or a consultation. Um, I always like to say too, when it comes to SEO, there's a lot of psychology behind it. So putting yourself in the shoes of your potential user, your potential customer. So like thinking if someone's searching for my website and they find me at the top of Google search, how much more likely are they to engage with my brand versus if they had to scroll or go to the second page? Um, Two, it increases your visibility and discoverability. So if people are able to easily find your content, um, it's going to just make it that much easier to start generating organic leads. If you're a newer brand or you're a newer website, it can feel like an uphill battle, just because you're probably starting from ground zero, for lack of better terms. So I will say one thing. We'll talk about this later, but SEO is one of those things that if you would start to invest in it earlier, you're going to be thanking yourself years later down the line. Number of times businesses or companies will come to us and say, oh, hey, I've been around for a while, but we haven't prioritized SEO. I want to start generating organic leads. And I'm like, okay, what have you done so far, like up to date, to start like setting the foundation for a successful SEO strategy? And the answer is usually not much. Um, and it's one of those things that results with SEO do take time. It is a long-term strategy for your business. Um, that being said, it's very lucrative and there's a lot of longevity behind the work you do from on the SEO front. Um, I'm calling out here like with long-term visibility. I like to kind of give the analogy of thinking about your website and digital presence as sort of like think of it as like your online real estate for your business. Um, if you were to invest in your website, invest into a page or property, for example, and optimize it, renovate it, so on and so forth, and it starts to rank, that page is not going anywhere. That property is not going anywhere. Obviously, there will be competitors who try to steal your spot or basically try to beat you out for your ranking position. But at the end of the day, it's much easier to maintain your position once you get ranked at the top of a page versus starting from nothing. Um, long story short, once you start generating content and generating pages that rank highly and generate search traffic, they can really be like long-term lead funnels for your business. So just thinking about the lead funnel, going from finding someone finding you in search, clicking and visiting your website, leads, and ultimately conversions. That's the ultimate goal of SEO and thinking about it as your over part of your overarching growth strategy. So, how search engines work. Um, First, the steps of being ranked and being seen on the internet. So, kind of broke it down, very simplified. Kind of three different stages here. Crawling your website. So this is search engines first discovering your website, discovering your content on the internet. Um, this is just kind of the first step of the puzzle. Just getting your website crawled is like a fundamental to get this off the ground. Um, Indexing, step two. So once a search engine has crawled your content, has been made aware that your content exists, the next step is them indexing, which means storing or organizing your content in the overarching library of content that's out there on the internet. And finally, the third step, ranking. So now that a search engine is aware of your content, they've indexed it, so they've added it to their library of content that they have at their disposal. They then need to determine which pages to show in the search results based off of what the search query is. So what is the searcher trying to find? What is their question they're trying to answer? What are they typing into the actual search engine? And then based off of algorithms, a number of factors, which we'll talk about briefly, um, but a number of factors which determine which pages they choose to show in those top results on a results page. And this goes the same way with Google, Yahoo, ChatGPT, um, Gemini, so on and so forth. They all function in this very similar fashion of crawling, indexing, and then ultimately determining what to show based off of their library of content they have at their disposal. So the evaluation process. So when search engines are going through their library of content and determining what pages to show and what to show to the searcher, there are four main questions they're looking to answer. Um, so which pages mention the topic? This relates to keywords. So which pages tie into or display the keywords that are related to the search that the individual is making. Um, Second step is which website or brand seems trustworthy. So this ties into, first off, having a solid UX or user experience for your website, um, having backlinks. So having any sort of authority, what sort of authority do you have on the internet? Um, if you're unfamiliar with the term backlinks, that is where external websites link back to your website. So by generating more backlinks for your website, you can build your domain authority and create a more authoritative brand or website. Um, so that's part of the question as well. So for example, you might have an article that covers, what is, or for example, something to do with depression or anxiety, for example. That's the thing first thing that comes to my mind. Um, are you going to outrank the Mayo Clinic, which is a highly authoritative healthcare organization? Um, I don't know your brand or your website, but most likely not. So it's those types of things that go into the algorithm of understanding what content is on the internet, um, which pages are come from the most authoritative place, or I'd like to say like from experts in this content. Um, Third question is which pages are fast and mobile friendly? So a number of people don't know this, but search engines, and I'll speak specifically to Google, uh, Google, Yahoo, those traditional search engines, they index mobile pages first. So they are mobile first index. That being that what that means is whenever they're going through and crawling and indexing your website pages, they're looking at the mobile version of the content. The reason being is that the majority of searches take place on a mobile phone. So they don't want to, at the end of the day, Google is trying to send a user to a a website that's going to be a positive experience. Um, if they get sent them to a website that's not a positive experience, it hurts their end user, which is the searcher. So they prioritize websites that are fast and mobile friendly, since they know the majority of searches are done on a mobile phone. So whenever you're thinking about your website, your content, always keep that in mind of thinking about what does my website look like on a mobile phone screen. Sometimes I see brands where like they'll hide content on their mobile on a mobile phone view, or only show a piece of content on a desktop view, for example, for whatever reason. Uh, Always keep in mind that the content that shows in the mobile version is what's going to be crawled and indexed. Um, and then finally, which results best match the user's intent? So is the user looking for informational content? Are they looking to buy something? Are they looking to research a specific brand? These are all the questions that go into that evaluation process. Um, so moving kind of a deeper into crawling and indexing. So first off, just to go a little bit deeper. So, what is crawling? I said this already, but think of crawling as the discovery process. Um, I have this spider here because a lot of people usually describe this as building out the web of content on the internet. Basically, how's everything connected, what content links where, etc. Um, so search engines send bots to websites and web pages on the internet to find new content. Things they're looking for are new pages that are being added to the internet, pages that are being updated. So, like, say, for example, you update a blog post, you update your homepage, you update a landing page, for example. They're going through and seeing if that content has changed from the last time they've seen it. They're also crawling images and videos, and then also looking at the links between pages. That includes internal links. So links that you are linking to other pages on your same website. So like connecting one page to another page you have, as well as backlinks. So if someone was to go to, for example, New York Times, is there a link from New York Times to your website? They're looking at all those links between the various pages on the internet. Um, that being said, on the note of backlinks, that's why if you're able to get a backlink from a highly authoritative website, say like a press release or a feature in Forbes or something like that, that's a high value link. Um, whenever a well-known brand or a well-known web domain links back to your website, that's a very strong indicator to Google and search engines that you're a reputable business, you're a reputable website. Um, so when it comes to how crawlers find your content, first they're going to look at your internal links, I'd say. So when someone goes to your homepage, let's say, for example, you're a software company. Maybe you have feature pages broken down in a drop down. Do your feature pages are they linked anywhere on your homepage? Are they linked in your footer? That's often a great place to add internal links as well. Thinking about your footer as a place to display your different industries you serve or your product features or things along that in that nature. Um, but if you don't have internal links going to a page, that's considered an orphaned page. An orphaned page has no internal links to your website. it's very difficult for a crawler to find that content. So it's very important that if you produce any form of content for your website that you want to rank, um, looking at opportunities to include internal links to that page. Um, Again, some good examples, footer. I would say if you are a software company or a tech company, or even also too if you're a consultant and you have like industry pages of the types of businesses you work with or things like that, adding those industries or those separate specialty pages or services pages to your footer is a great place to easily do that and implement those. um, External backlinks. So, like I just described, New York Times, if you had a press feature and they linked back to your website, um, that's another way that a crawler can find your website. They're crawling the New York Times piece. They then find your website by continuing the crawl and going through to your website. Um, your sitemap. So, if you are unaware of what this is, every website, typically if you use like a standard like website, like a out of the box website builder like Squarespace or Wix or Webflow, etc., a lot of these things will automatically generate your sitemap for you. But your sitemap is basically a uh, a file that lays out the full architecture of your website. So what are all the pages on your website? Those would all be listed on your sitemap. Again, if you use a standard website tool, this is already being done automatically for you. If you're doing any sort of custom coded website, etc., this is a file you would need to create. But this sitemap would then be submitted. It should be a part of your website, but it should also be submitted in Google Search Console, which we'll talk about Google Search Console briefly later. But again, the sitemap is kind of like that guide that a crawler can use to know which pages they should be looking for on your website. And then finally, previously indexed pages. So if there's a high performing page on your website, and it's starting to rank, this could be a great opportunity to look at adding links to other pages you want to start ranking. Um, so again, if they're aware of the pages and they crawl them, adding any sort of links can help these other pages. Um, I like to say that when it comes to good SEO, you want to be thinking about the navigation. So when you're putting yourself in the shoes of a bot, but also the end user, how does the end user find this content? Like if I produce a page that talks about this great feature that my software or my technology has, if I don't have that linked anywhere, how do I expect an end user to find it? Um, so again, going back to what I said with it being a really SEO having a bit of psychology into it and putting yourself in the shoes of the user. Um, when it comes to the user, think about how are they going to find this content? If it's not linked, they're not going to see it, and at the same time, a crawler is not going to see it. So indexing. So now that content's been discovered, that doesn't mean that it's going to start showing or that it's even going to be indexed. Um, Once a page has been discovered, it's going to evaluate what is the content about, which is based off of um, the text you have on the page. What are the keywords and topics of the content, again, related to the text that you have on the page? How is the page quality? So that ties into mobile responsiveness, your page speed, so on and so forth. Your content structure. So looking at your heading hierarchy, is the page following proper fundamentals with page setup? Um, does it include any media? What does the metadata look like? So metadata, if you're not familiar, this will tie into like your meta titles, meta descriptions. These are all things that go into the evaluation process. If it meets all of these boxes and it's viewed as high quality and meets all of these standards, it may then be added to a search engine's indexed. Um, so again, discoverability is just the first step. I always like to say too, people always ask like, "Oh, could I just go to ChatGPT and like spin up 30 blog posts and just like post those?" on my website. You could, but is it going to be high quality content that's not already existing somewhere on the internet? Perhaps. But it might. But at the end of the day, if it's not high value or high quality, there's a very slim chance that it's going to be indexed in the first place. Um, so at the end of the day, you're trying to think about what can I do that creates unique and high value content so that I have a better chance of the page being indexed by Google. Um, so again, what I had just said, index does not equal being ranked. Um, if your content is not relevant, um, for example, if it doesn't uh, introduce any, like for example, if it doesn't have any sort of informational content, if it's you're just like keyword stuffing on a page, it's not relevant to the search, etc., it's not going to be ranked. Um, Authority. So this one can again feel like an uphill battle if you're a newer brand. But if you don't have a strong authority or a strong domain authority, it can be hard to get those early pages indexed. Um, you really need to start looking at if you're just getting started and you're a newer brand, you need to look at long tail keyword opportunities where you have uh, not as much competition, so that you can, even if you don't have a strong domain authority, you can still have an opportunity to be indexed and start ranking for some keywords. Um, Authority comes with time, comes with backlinks, comes with the longer your website's been on the internet. These are all factors that go into that. But again, authority goes into determining if you're indexed or not. User experience. So again, ties back into your mobile friendliness. What does the page look like? For example, too, if you go to a website that has a bunch of pop-ups, like that negatively impact the user experience, that's also going to negatively impact your technical performance of the website. For example, like with pop-ups, etc. So if it has those elements, it's most likely not going to be indexed, or uh, you know, that goes into the decision factors. Competition. So I kind of briefly spoke about this, but does your competition have stronger, is your competition stronger for the page you're trying to rank or trying to get indexed? Um, for example, if you're trying to rank for uh, small business CRM, um, might be trying to rank up against HubSpot, which is a huge brand with a really strong online SEO presence. Um, it can be very difficult to go against brands like that have a strong authority. That being said, that doesn't mean that you can't eventually start to rank for those things. But in the early days, you want to focus on long tail keywords that have lower competition to start building that domain authority. Then I like to say later down the line, once you start building that reputation and you start ranking, then you can start swinging for the fences and going after these more competitive keywords that, much larger brands or authoritative brands are ranking for. Um, and then also search intent. So understanding too, um, is a user looking for informational content, transactional content? Are they doing brand research, etc.? Um, all these factors go into determining if a page is going to be ranked. Um, so again, I kind of touched about this, but reasons why a page might not be indexed by Google. If it has low quality content, so like an example of just spinning up a bunch of blog posts through an AI tool and publishing them, um, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be low quality content, but if it's something that's very duplicative or that other brands are doing the exact same thing, um, in my experience, I often see that it doesn't get indexed. If you have duplicate pages, so I sometimes have seen this, which is interesting. But if you start to have a page rank, say you have a blog post that's ranking, I've seen brands where they actually just like copy and paste and do like they just say, oh, well, this page is ranking. Like I'm gonna just make another page that does the same thing. So just to make sure that I maintain that high ranking. Um, that's not how it works. So if you have a high page that's like ranking in search, Just creating another, duplicating the content, it does not mean that you're going to have two shots at being able to keep that position in Google search. It actually can hurt your performance if Google is aware that you have duplicate content and you're just like copying and pasting a blog post or a page. Um, if you have any technical errors on the page, which ties into like site performance, site speed, things of that nature, obviously no index tags. Um, I've seen this before as well, where you might have a new website. You're like, oh, why am I not showing Google search? A no index tag actually tells crawlers do not index my website. So ensure that your website does not have that. If you're wanting to rank organically, you don't want to have no index tags. A lot of builders will have that like out of the box as you're building the website to no index it. So ensure that that's turned off whenever you launch your website. Um, that being said, there are times where you would want to use no index tags. Let's say, for example, you have an ad landing page that you're driving paid traffic to, and you don't want someone to find that organically. You just want paid traffic to go to that. That's when you like would implement a no index tag, for example. Um, if you have poor crawlability, so the page is not able to be crawled effectively. And again, if it's slow or there's broken pages. So like I like to say too, if you don't maintain your website, you don't maintain the links in a blog post or for example, or you're leading to a bunch of 404 broken links, Google's going to deprioritize your website. It shows that it's an unkept website. It's not being monitored, and it's not kept up to date. So these are all things that can impact your indexability of a website page. I'm gonna take a quick. I see there are some questions. Um, maybe. All right, cool. We'll just keep on going. But so,
Yeah, sorry, I'm notoriously mouthy. This the last one was a question.
sorry, sorry. What was your question?
No, I'm sorry. I had posted a couple of things, but the my last one was really the only question. Like I just learned that since my landing page is React, that's rendered client side. So the search engines aren't going to see the paragraph content on that page because you can't see it. If you go to view source, and I think if you don't see anything there, then the search engine's not going to see it either, right?
Exactly. So that's actually funny you say that. I've actually seen this before with a company we worked with. Um, I will say I'm not a experienced developer in any way, shape, or form. That being said, I do know that for React specifically, since it is by nature rendered client side, there is something you can do. You would need to, don't quote me on anything, but there is definitely something you can do that makes it that you change it to where it's not. I I don't know the full details of it because I'm not a developer, but I do know that we have seen that with a client and we were able to solve that. Um, once their dev team jumped in and like looked further into it. But there is a solution. It's not, there's a number of websites that are built on React that fix this issue and do rank organically. It's not the end of the world if you've already like built a whole website or a whole product on that. Um, cool. So looking at ranking factors. So, touched on some of these, but what determines your ranking? Um, so say that your page is now it's been crawled, it's been indexed. What determines where I show on a search engine? Um, First off, is how relevant is your content to the search? So, if the searcher is looking for informational content, explain. Um, explain what this medication does, explain what this treatment is, whatever the case may be. If your content is informational and answering those questions, it's going to tie in nicely to that search query. If the individual is searching best running shoes um, for marathon, for example, maybe you have a piece of content that's a comparison guide that like breaks down what all these different types of shoes are, for example. That's highly relevant to the search. So again, going back to what I've said a few times, but put yourself in the shoes of the searcher. Um, what is my ideal customer or client searching for on the internet? What are their questions or the information they're searching in a search engine? And how do I create content that matches the intent of that user? Um, Content quality. So is the content helpful, accurate, trustworthy? Um, I always like to say, like, if you're wanting to leverage AI to kind of, if you're a small team and you're wanting to leverage AI to get content out there faster, I always say use it for your framework, for your uh, building out like a guide, so to speak, of a writing guide, but then being human and actually writing out the content and fleshing it out further. Um, that's going to first ensure that the content is unique. It's going to ensure that it has its own tone and its own voice. It's not just regurgitated from uh, ChatGPT and like another brand has the exact same thing in different language. So I'd say that that's one way you could look at leveraging AI to help speed up this process. But again, you want to make sure the content's helpful, accurate, and trustworthy. Um, User experience. So this is something that I've said a few times also, but it's extremely important that you don't neglect the user experience. Um, is the page loading quickly? Is the web page mobile friendly? Is it responsive? Is, someone not having to scroll horizontally on their mobile phone to see the full content, for example? It's very important you prioritize this. Again, this is the first thing Google's going to look at is the mobile version of your website or your web page. So don't neglect that experience. Um, your authority. So does the website appear credible, trusted? This goes back into the backlinks that I said. Brands that have more backlinks generate more authority online. Um, Additionally, too, maybe you're saying, oh, I don't, I'm a newer brand, I don't have backlinks. How can I look at making my content more credible or trusted? If you're doing like informational content, blog content, adding links out to reputable sources. So like say that you're a healthcare company, linking out to like the Mayo Clinic or maybe linking out to a Forbes article or whatever it might be, including external credible links also helps with the authority of your page. Um, Also, a small change that's very easy to do is introducing an author bio. So if you are the author of the page, introducing a bio that lists your credentials or your credibility, um, and basically why should you be talking about this? Who are you to talk about this content or this information? Introducing an author bio can be a really easy win for helping build authority and credibility for content. Um, and then search intent. So if someone was coming to Google to get an answer or find information, does the page solve the person's problem or answer their question? Um, I would like to say too, Google's end customer is the searcher. They're trying to create a good, positive experience for their end customer, who is the person using Google search. So always keep in mind that they're going to prioritize brands and websites that can achieve that and can provide a positive experience, answer the question that's being asked, so on and so forth. Um, so always keep that in mind as you're thinking about your web pages and your content. So understanding keywords. So when it comes to keywords, I'm sure if you're starting to do SEO, you're researching it, getting started. You know what I'm talking about. Keywords are the search terms that users enter into the search engine. And these are things that you want to start thinking about incorporating into your content. Some examples are like best therapist in Austin, how to improve your website SEO, coffee shop near me. These are all things that people would be typing into a search engine. Um, they use these to connect users to the relevant content, and it helps when you start to include these types of keywords in your content, it helps search engines better understand what should I show this for? For example, if you write a piece on um, pizza shops, they're not going to show you for coffee shops, obviously. They're going to tie you to the keywords that are being searched if you have those relevant keywords on the page. Um, that being said, you don't want to stuff keywords onto a page. I always like to say be human in how you incorporate keywords into your content and make it sound as if you were speaking. That's the best rule of thumb when it comes to incorporating keywords into your content. I've talked about this briefly, but there's a difference between short tail keywords and long tail keywords. So short tail keywords, highly competitive searches. I have some examples here, but like SEO or SEO agency or healthcare marketing agency. These will all be considered short tail keywords. With these searches, they have higher search volume, but are extremely competitive in terms of search, in terms of what's potentially ranking for these. And they're obviously extremely less targeted. Um, like if you are, doing, I don't know, CRM software, for example. If you're a brand, you focus in maybe say, for example, I focus in CRM software for the medical industry. You don't want to just try to rank for CRM software. You're going to be going against Salesforce, HubSpot, these other huge conglomerate brands that like you as a smaller brand are not going to be able to compete with. You want to look for long tail keyword opportunities. Um, so when it comes to long tail keywords, these are looking at more specific search phrases. So SEO agency for therapist, anxiety therapy for women, um, how to improve local SEO for small businesses. These are all like opportunities or free to create content, for example, um, that has less competition and has a better opportunity for you to start ranking for. So if you like, for example, if you're go back to CRM software. Maybe you see that there's an opportunity to rank for CRM software for med spas, or for example, or something along those lines. These are things you need to be thinking about. And at the end of the day, you need to do the research to understand, are people actually searching for this? We'll talk about some basic tools I'd recommend you implement to start doing keyword research. But obviously, you want to try to create content that is generating search volume. So, don't just start typing a bunch of words together and think, oh, I'll start to rank for this. If no one's typing that in, then it doesn't make sense to try to make content for that. So, common mistakes that I often see, I've talked about some of these throughout, but keyword stuffing. You want to make sure that your keywords are incorporated organically as if you were speaking. Um, so this is an example, and I've used therapists a lot. That's what we specialize in is like mental health care. So I've used this a lot in examples, but for example, best Austin therapist for therapy in Austin, offering Austin therapy services. Like it's very clear that someone is keyword stuffing, trying to rank for Austin therapy in Austin with this example here. You want to try to incorporate these keywords organically, um, and as natural as you can. Don't just try to stuff keywords into your. I recently saw with a client that they started stuffing a bunch of keywords into the alt text of their images. Don't do that. That's not what you should be doing. Or stuffing a bunch of keywords into your meta descriptions. That's not what that's for. Um, so avoid keyword stuffing. I've said this again, but ignoring your mobile version. I'd say today everybody should go and just scroll through the mobile version of their website and just audit it. Just see what it looks like. How does it perform? Is it loading quickly? What is the experience of somebody who finds my website on the mobile version? Slow website speed. So this is one of the biggest killers for ranking organically. If you use a standard out of the box like website tool, um, Squarespace, Wix, Webflow, WordPress, they're usually already in a pretty good place out of the box, unless you have like a very large website or a lot of content. But you also want to make sure you're keeping tabs on your website speed and how quickly it's loading and performing. Because if it starts to load slowly, it's going to be quickly deprioritized or not rank. Um, Weak or thin content, so uninformative content, um, I'd say like regurgitated AI content. That's just it's not. I'm not gonna say it's not going to rank because I have seen AI content, like just fully straight AI content rank, but you're it's very unlikely. You shouldn't try to just crank out a bunch of blog posts and hope that something's gonna start ranking. Also, too, I always like to say, uh, us as like an audience, like we're much more in tune to what is AI generated now. I don't know if anyone else can speak this from experience, but it's very clear to me what is AI generated and what's not. There's very telltale signs of something being generated by ChatGPT, and just formatting and language. Um, and at the end of the day, a customer is going, if they can clearly tell that this is just an AI generated product description, AI generated blog, or whatever it might be, they're gonna view this as less authoritative, and less credible of a brand. And then missing the basics. So we didn't get into these in deep detail. Um, I've done other sessions where we've gone a bit deeper with these, but just some of the basics with SEO, and maybe just write these things down to check after our call. But your title tags, your meta descriptions, your heading structure, so your H1s, H2s, H3s, H4s, making sure all of your website and content is structured properly, um, making sure that you have alt text on your images, or your poor internal linking structure. Um, these are like the basics. Like these are things that should be done at a minimum if you want to start trying to rank content. Um, so I'd say make sure you address all of these items. Um, Also, too, just to call out, I've done sessions in the past where we've gone a bit deeper on these topics. Any of the past recordings for Start Out that I've done, they're on their YouTube channel. They're also on our website. So if you want to go through and dive deeper into any of these and just get a bit more information on these basics, I'd recommend checking out some of those other uh, past sessions we've done. And then poor site structure. So this goes back into like your internal linking, but like if you have feature pages, if you have industry pages, how is someone getting to them? How is your website structured? How's everything connected? Um, these are things you need to be thinking about and trying to avoid, like a poor site structure if you want to start thinking about ranking and performing well. I always like to say you want to get the foundation good of your website. So making sure we're loading quickly, we've addressed any sort of technical issues, our strike, or we've decided what our site structure is going to look like moving forward. These are all the foundational items. Once that's done, you can start thinking about ranking and creating content. But if you start creating content and creating new pages and of have not addressed some of these issues here, it's like a waste of time, truthfully. You just shouldn't. You should take care of these foundational things first before you start thinking about your long-term ranking strategy. And then a couple of things just to call out some myths that I often hear. With AI, SEO is not important anymore. SEO is dead. That's not SEO isn't not going anywhere. People are constantly going to be searching for information online. SEO and how you optimize your website, it still remains extremely valuable. It's just evolving and changing. Um, it's not going anywhere. And even though Gemini has that information that pops up at the top of Google search nowadays, people still go through and look at the links that are presented below the AI response, um, even with that generated response that comes from an AI, from the Gemini AI tool. Two, more keywords equals better ranking. No. I one thing I often see too, it's like, well, I want to rank for these five different things, and I've put these five different things on this single page, and I want this page to rank for, CRM for healthcare, CRM for education, CRM for business. That's just not how it works. I'd say you really want to try to think about specializing a page to a single keyword cluster strategy. So, like, if you're, I'd say, versus like trying to group like four industries or four features, for example, onto a single page, break those out into separate pages and go deep in that topic. So, like, in terms of like addressing every angle. So, like, what are the FAQs around this topic? What are the different, like, if you're talking about features, um, you know, including, for example, keywords, or trying to think of a good example. Like if you're doing like CRM for healthcare, doing FAQs, is this HIPAA compliant? Like common questions people would be thinking about or asking when they're looking for these tools. So um, I'd say choose a cluster of keywords that relate to a similar topic. Don't try to do too much with one page, and try to go deep on that topic for any page you're trying to rank. Um, SEO is quick or works instantly. That is wrong. It is a long-term strategy. It takes time. I'll be truthful, like for if you create a new piece of content and you want to be indexed, I truthfully, in my experience, don't see movement at the earliest 30 to 45 days. Um, that's just kind of the name of the game. Um, You'll start, if you start to prioritize SEO, you'll start seeing positive indicators that things are working and things are starting to move in the right direction. When you start seeing your impressions and clicks grow, it's going to be minimal at first, but you'll start seeing them in about, truthfully, about 4 to 5 months. If you're starting from nothing, it's going to take time. Now I've seen faster, and that's just kind of like I'd say like a average expectation. But if you're just getting started, it's not something that's going to happen quickly. When it comes to SEO, it compounds over time. So think about if you get one page in the next 6 months that ranks organically, it starts generating traffic and clicks. 2 months later, you get a second page that starts ranking highly, generating clicks and impressions. I would just say with SEO, the growth is exponential. So it starts off very slow. And then once you start getting pages ranking and start generating organic traffic, as long as those previous pages are still maintaining their ranking position, it's going to start growing exponentially and it's going to start curving up in terms of performance. Now that's like the long-term goal. It's going to take time. But that's really comes to SEO. Think about it compounding in terms of performance. Ranking number one guarantees conversions. Not at all. If you're ranking for a piece of informational content, that doesn't, for example, that's not transactional in nature. If you're wanting someone to buy your product, you need to think about conversion rate optimization. So just because I have a piece that's informational and answering your questions people are searching for online, how do I gear that content or introduce elements onto the page to help convert that traffic? Maybe potentially I start thinking about my email marketing strategy. Maybe I have a newsletter sign up. Like thinking about like the overarching long-term marketing funnel. Um, but again, just because your page starts ranking on number one does not mean sales are going to start happening or conversions are going to start happening. You need to think about like that. How does it fit into the bigger puzzle, and what's the intent of the searcher? Um, and then SEO is about optimizing for the algorithm. Um, I'd say when it comes to search, they're increasingly rewarding websites that are looking to genuinely provide helpful and informational content. Now, obviously, the algorithm does play into that and determining rankings. All that being said, I always like to say go in following best practices, but don't try to game the algorithm or game the system. You should try to, at the end of the day, create informational, unique, genuine content following the proper guidelines of best practices for ranking, um, and you're going to get rewarded for that. All that being said, as long as you're not trying to go against something that's extremely competitive. Um, so don't try to game the system, basically. And finally, just to wrap up, I know we're close to time. So just some quick like toolbox. So if you're just getting started with SEO, these are like the basics. Google Search Console. If you don't know what this is, you need it. It is a free tool that is part of Google's suite of products. This is where you'd submit your sitemap. You're going to be able to easily track your organic performance in Google search. So, how many clicks am I getting to Google? What are my impressions? Uh, which pages are being shown? Which pages are being indexed and crawled? All that information is in Google Search Console. So, I'd recommend going set that up if you haven't already. Google Analytics, another free tool to use. Highly recommend it. This is not only going to help you on the SEO and organic front, just overall with like your marketing reporting. Um, there's a number of tools out there, so maybe you have a different report metric, a tool to report on your metrics. But I usually recommend Google Analytics since it's free. Um, Going to help you understand your site traffic, how people navigate across your website, and your highest traffic pages. Um, SEMrush. So I have SEMrush here. That's what we use and what I recommend. There's a number of SEO tools out there. SEMrush, Ahrefs, Screaming Frog. Like there's a number of them. Uh, all that being said, if SEO is something you want to prioritize for your business, you need to invest in some form of tool. Not going to tell you which one you have to do. I recommend this one, but whatever tool you can have at your disposal to start doing keyword research, understanding what your competition's ranking for, finding new opportunities for keywords. There's a number of features in any of these tools that you decide to go with, but the biggest thing is this is going to help speed up the process and really help put data and metrics behind the work that you're doing. Like you don't want to just go create a bunch of content that you think might rank. You want to have some data-driven insights into this is what competition looks like, these are the keywords, and this is what the potential traffic looks like. All this to inform your strategy. And then finally, Google Page Speed Insights. Again, this is a free tool to use, part of Google. It helps just track and see how's your site performing from a technical performance in your site speed. Um, so again, would if you're looking to test any, just see how your website's doing, go on there today. Literally takes like 10 seconds. You input your URL, it's going to give you a quick report on how your page is performing. Um, so this is like the basics for like your toolkit and your toolbox. Um, I think final thing, quick wins. So after our session today, things to go through and audit and look at. Look at improving your page titles. Look at auditing your meta descriptions. Look at adding internal links to your website and across your website. Optimizing your images, so ensuring that they're compressed fully, they're not slowing down your website. Um, Said this already, but auditing your website to ensure that it's mobile friendly. Um, Check your website speed on Page Speed Insights. Ensure your content is helpful for any content you're producing. And then finally, get your tools in place. Like if this is something you want to start prioritizing for the business, you need to have the right tools and the right tech stack. Um, so again, this is kind of like some quick wins that I'd recommend we wrap up. And I know that the recording of today will be shared out post our meeting. I know we're at time, so I'll spend a couple minutes here just to see if there's any last minute questions. But I do have a hard stop, so I can only hang for a few. But yeah, I appreciate everyone joining today, and feel free to put questions in the chat or unmute yourself if you want. So I see a quick question: how to get quality backlinks? Yes, SEMrush can be helpful in finding backlink opportunities. There's a lot of features that it has. I also like to say too, once you start producing quality content and informational content, and it starts ranking, you will start to organically generate backlinks. People will start to reference your content once you start to rank and get pages ranking. Um, cool, cool. I think that was the only question we have here. But oh wait, no, actually. Alt text for images. So I've covered this in previous sessions. Um, there, if you go to our website and we have like a resources and webinars drop down where I've included all the past uh, sessions we've led. Also, if you just search on YouTube with Start Out and Rex Marketing, you'll see any of our previous sessions. I've done deeper dives into like technical, using AI, so on and so forth. So I recommend going one of those to get some deeper information. Um, Yes, all this relates to template sites as well. So everything we've covered today, think about how do you optimize your base template pages. Um, that way it can be implemented across all of your blog posts or whatever your template pages are for. Um, cool. Awesome, sweet. Well, I have to hop, but appreciate everyone's time. Um, hope this was helpful. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. But if not, I'll see you all to the next session. Thank you.